we are back in the garage. Today, we're actually going to do a lot of unboxing. There's so many packages and boxes. It is really hard to stay cool. I really like this stuff. I've used it in the past. It's never let me down. This, for what it is super expensive. This is probably like maybe $10 of material, and I think it's like $100 to buy. I hope not to find any issues. We're going to get started on tearing down this engine. Alrighty guys, we are back in the garage. Today, we're actually going to do a lot of unboxing. Alrighty guys, there is a lot of stuff in front of me. Get started. There's so many packages and boxes. I'm actually going to move some stuff out of the way, so hopefully you guys can see better. I'm going to start with the stuff that is already opened. This is just kind of how it came. These are ARP fasteners. These are for the connecting rods in the motor. The ARP bolts. These are the exhaust bolts. Next thing is, this is a diamond ring filer. All the bolts and stuff open. This, guys, is our entire gasket set for the whole motor. So every gasket that needs to go into the block, rear main seal, front main seal, exhaust gaskets, head gaskets. Right now this is our feeler gauge set for filing rings. And then this is actually to get the rings even on the piston cylinder, on the cylinder of the block. So we're gonna use these, space it out, make sure that everything is super even. If you guys don't know why you measure ring gap, well then you're kind of in for a treat, because you measure ring gap for boost. And that's the big secret here. G-Force Performance products. This right here, boys, brand new G-Force product that just came out, maybe for 12 rib, for the LSA supercharger. We are gonna supercharge the RX7. Any belt slippage? Let's see this guy. Look at all that billet. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 ribs here, so this will not do a 12 rib. This is 8 only. Perfectly, it does. Yep, so this is an 8 rib system only, not a 12 rib system. And it looks like the rest of it is just hardware, nuts and bolts. And it looks like this might be some instructions. The next thing, I'm just gonna tell you what's in here because I already opened it and I don't wanna reopen it. This is our brand new CTSB 320 amp alternator. This is what's gonna run the power supply for the engine, the battery, all the electronics, everything we have going on, 320 amps. Cool thing about alternators is you can always go bigger, but if you go too low and you don't have enough, then it becomes a problem for your system. So the alternator works like, it's never going to over amplify something. It's always going to do what it's supposed to do. This is something pretty controversial in a race car application, and I don't really street drive the RX7. It is street legal, but it's not really something that I do very often. When I'm sitting on track and it's 105 degrees outside, 115, 120 degrees inside of the car, it is really hard to stay cool. And you're not running all the time. You're sitting in grid, you're waiting to get laps in, you know, you're not running back-to-back laps, you know, heating up, you're heating up, your helmet's heating up, you're sweating like crazy. That's where this guy comes in. This is our new LSA or CTSB AC compressor. So this is what's gonna provide our engine and our inside of our car with air conditioning. Now we already have everything set up inside of the car for air conditioning. I already made all the lines last winter. I already put the AC condenser in. I already did all of that fun stuff. So this should be a plug and play. We might have to make a couple new lines depending on how they bolt up. Again, I'm not gonna open this guy because it's already nicely packaged. We will open this at a later date when we're gonna get ready to put it on the motor. So before we put the engine in, all these parts are gonna be on the block, ready to go in, good to go. This right here is a 3-inch X-pipe. The exhaust on the car was doing fine. We really didn't have any issues with it. The thing is that one, it looked terrible. It was rusty. There's a couple pinholes. I could have re-welded those things, but I really wanted to make a new exhaust for this car for 2 reasons. I wanted to have 2 exhaust setups. I wanted to have a street setup, and I wanted to have a track setup. And the exhaust that we currently had on the car was also in the place, or in a bad place for our rear end. It was really hard to get to some of those bolts, impossible to get to like one of them. So when I designed the new exhaust, I'm going to design it in mind to be able to get to everything and access everything everything super easily, maybe by taking one V-band clamp off or two V-band clamps off, or maybe none at all if we don't have to. But this is gonna be really nice because what we'll do is we'll have an exhaust system that dumps right past the rear axle, just like in Formula Drift. That's the spec. You have to dump it past the rear axle. So ours will be dumping past the rear axle, and it'll just kind of be like a turn down system. So that way if we crash into something in the rear end, it's not gonna destroy our exhaust system. The cool thing about that is we can put a V-band clamp right at that turn down, so we can just take that off, put another piece of exhaust in there with the V-band clamp, and now we have a street exhaust setup for the car. So if we do want to take it to some events or really drive it somewhere or whatever on the street, we can have a street setup exhaust. We're going to build the first one for the race car exhaust, and then probably over the winter I will do the street setup exhaust. That'll be another video, but this is super cool because this is going to allow us to have that X-pipe, and now I don't have to weld this. Welds on here are pretty good about what I could do, but now I don't have to cut, manufacture, and build this whole thing. So that's super nice. Now I already opened up this box, but I'm gonna open up the box itself. This guy right here is a spring compressor. So this is gonna go around the piston itself with the springs attached, and then that's gonna allow the piston to slide down into the cylinder hole without us damaging those rings on the way in. That's very important. You don't wanna damage anything. So we got one of these kits, so that way we can use it forever. We're not gonna damage anything. This guy is a water pump, -12 ORB on the inside, -12 on the outside. If you guys know me or seen the car before already, you know I'm a huge fan of AN lines. I run everything -AN PTFE only. It is the highest grade motorsport line that I think that you can get. If there's a better, higher grade thing that you guys think is out there, let me know. I'd be happy to investigate it and actually look into it. But in my personal opinion and my experience working on race cars, working on daily driving cars and things like that, PTFE line is rated to an insane pressure rating. Most of it is like 1800 PSI, depending on the line size. Some of it's even higher than that. I'm not sure what -12 is rated to. I'm assuming it's probably over 1000 PSI, but either way, very, very, very good stuff. It's all stainless steel on the outside, at least the stuff that I buy is, and on the inside you have that PTFE coating, which means that you can run any fluid in there that you wish to run. In this case, this is going to be our circulating pump for the supercharger. Now, when the supercharger is getting cooled, you have to have an air to water intercooler in the front of the car, and then inside of the supercharger there is an air to water intercooler inside, which is going to heat up. And so what we want to do is we want to pull the heat from the inside of the supercharger through our air to water intercooler in the front of the car, and then back through into the supercharger, so that way it stays cool. You have to have a pump that is designed for that to run. I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe this is either a 20, 25, 30, or 35 gallon per minute pump. I know that there's a huge broad span in there. Any of those are going to work for our application, so it really doesn't matter. It's very high-end stuff. This is -10 gauge wire, and it's all copper, so we're going to continue that theme. We're going to run -10 to a relay. Our relay is going to be set up, so when we turn the car on, or when it hits a certain temperature, we are going to have this pump kick on. One of the two. I'm not exactly sure yet what I'm going to do or how we're going to run that. I will show you guys, of course. Right here we have Max Tough Royal Purple Synthetic Oil. Now this is assembly lube only. This is to assemble your engine. Since we're going to be taking part of the engine apart, I usually like to replace everything with assembly lube on it, so it kind of stays fresh. Now this isn't a new motor. We're not like rebuilding the engine or anything, but we are going to be updating some things. So as we go through and we update stuff and we reassemble, we're going to be reassembling with Royal Purple. I use Royal Purple oil in the entire car except for the transmission, but the diff, the engine, all of that is Royal Purple. So I really like this stuff. I've used it in the past. It's never let me down. You can pretty much use any assembly lube you want. I do recommend this. This is basically the AN lines that I'm talking about. These are all PTFE. Now, if you're dealing with AN, it's very important you know what you're buying, because there's two different kinds of AN. There's the kind of AN hoses with the rubber on the inside. It's like a synthetic rubber. So if you're buying this stuff, make sure you buy the right fittings. Now, these are all -12. So this is everything that we're gonna need to run from the supercharger to the intercooler to that water pump, and then make sure it's a full loop. I will show you guys when we get to that point how we're gonna build these lines, how I'm gonna make the lines, design them, and then get them fitted up into the car. This guy is interesting. I've never used one of these before ever. This is a solenoid valve. Basically just opens and closes. So when there's no power applied, solenoid closed. When power is applied, solenoid is open, which means that the valve is open. 12 volt DC direct current, which is what a battery gives you. A lot of these that you'll buy, they're gonna be for 120 volt systems. So you have to be very careful on what you're purchasing. So I did a lot of research before I bought this. These right here are little bungs. These are 1/8 NPT thread, and they're aluminum. I use a lot of Evil Energy fittings. It depends on what we're building, but Evil Energy fittings have never really let me down. I'm a huge fan. If you guys are looking for fittings and you want them to be cheap and you want them to work, I highly recommend Evil Energy. I've never had any issues. These again are -12 ORB fittings to -12 flare fittings. So these I ordered from Nice CNC. I first heard about Nice CNC when I started working on my KTM 500 EXCF. I bought a lot of Nice CNC parts from them, and they all worked out flawlessly. I never had any issues with anything, so I'm a pretty big fan of Nice CNC. I know some people don't like their product, but in my opinion, it is one of the best. This is full billet. I mean, full billet aluminum, comes with O-rings, comes with bolts. So I'm gonna try to keep these protected because they came protected. Right here is 12 AN bungs. Okay, this guy right here is a lockout. What this does is this locks the flywheel to the motor, so when you're tightening stuff down, it keeps everything in place. This is great for tightening like the crank pulley down, basically anything down on the engine that needs to be tightened instead of spinning. I like to tighten the flywheel bolts with this on. I like to tighten the clutch bolts with this on. I like to tighten a lot of things with this guy on there. This is a throttle cable. I had to cut my throttle cable to make it work for the application in the past. So this is our new throttle cable. You can always replace it. So we have the LSA adapter for the throttle cable. So it's literally made for this throttle cable, for the LSA supercharger. So when we put that LSA supercharger on here, we can use this throttle cable or the one that's already on the car because it's the same throttle cable. And we have everything to adapt it to. This guy right here is pretty cheap, like 20 bucks. This, for what it is super expensive. This is probably like maybe $10 of material, and I think it's like $100 to buy. These are specific to Ryobi, and these are Ryobi wall mounts for your batteries. You just mount them on the wall, slap your battery in there, so this will hold up to 12 batteries. These are silicone boots. These are the same boots that I've been using on the RX7. We had a steering rack issue and one of them got cut, and when one of them got cut, it allows air, moisture, debris to get inside your rack. I don't like that, so I wanted to replace them. We are almost done. Oh. This right here is a factory LS1 or F-body oil pan. This is machined out of aluminum. This is not factory machining. This is not cast aluminum. This is billet aluminum. So there is a difference in the design. You can kind of see it in the color too. The reason why I wanted one of these is because I want to easily be able to weld to this thing. I don't want to have problems welding. I don't want it to blow apart on me. I want it to be nice. I want it to be simple. I want it to be easy. So that's why we have this guy. And it was relatively inexpensive too. One of the things that I've been wanting to change on my setup for a long time now is the oil cooler lines, which also run into the AccuSump lines. We have a one-way check valve from the oil cooler to the AccuSump, so the AccuSump cannot pump oil into the oil cooler because that would purpose of the AccuSump. So instead, it pumps oil directly into the engine, but the oil cooler still can flow one way, not the other way. That's how that works. What I've been wanting to do for a long time is to drill and tap bung in here, which instead of drilling and tapping, I really wanted to weld. So I have a 1/8 NPT bung. I told you I'd show you guys what this is for. This is gonna go probably right there. I think that's gonna be the best spot for it. We might try to put it somewhere else, but I think this is gonna be it. So what we'll do is we'll drill a hole in here, we'll put this in here, we'll weld this in. This is gonna be our oil temperature sensor, okay? I really wanted it to be below the pickup tube, where the pickup tube is picking up oil from, so I know what temperature this oil is coming from. I kind of thought we were getting inaccurate readings because the other one is coming from here, and that's very close to the exhaust. So I was figuring that if it's coming close to the exhaust, we're probably getting not the best reading. The second thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to change the way our bracket bolts up here. I really hate this gasket style. These gaskets tend to leak a lot. Even with how nice these gaskets are, they still tend to leak for whatever reason. If they're not tightened up or if they're just a little bit too loose or whatever, which I've never really had that issue, but we did have one significant leak at the beginning of this year. That was a really pain in the ass to fix. So I don't want to ever do that again. What we're gonna try to do is take both of these bolts off. There's two holes in here. These are flow holes. One is an inlet, one is an outlet. It's very important that you don't mix those up. I don't know which one's which. I think though this one is the outlet and I think this one's the inlet. We'll figure that out for sure before we do anything and make sure that we're doing it correctly. What I want to do is these two holes in here, I want to drill and tap them for 10 AN fitting. Now, when we're underneath the race car and the exhaust is literally like right here, super hard to get to these fittings. I would dare say impossible. It's not impossible, but it's so hard to get to them. In a lot of cases, we weren't able to tighten things down the way I wanted to be able to. It wasn't very serviceable when the exhaust was on. And when you're at the side of the track and you're trying to diagnose an oil leak or whatever, you don't want to be running, through this. This is a block off plate. This is actually just one that flows through because you can't restrict these. You can't just tap this off. You have to allow flow to go in between here. So anyhow, what we're going to do with this is we're going to fix that and drill and tap these holes out, put two 10 AN fittings in there, put our 10 ANs on here, and then that'll be for our oil cooler and for the accu sumps. We're going to force oil right back into this. The other thing that I thought about doing was changing up the accu sump completely and dumping oil directly back into the pan. Now, I haven't decided on if I'm going to do that or not. I've been thinking about it for a while now. I'm just not sure that's the move. It is something that I've definitely considered, is to separate accu sump from the oil cooler system, which I think would be nice, but it's been working the way it is. So I'm not really sure that it's necessary for me to go to that extra work, make different lines, make different fittings, and do that. But if we want to do that, I want to have the ability to do that, and this we can do that with. So what we'll probably end up doing is running a 10 AN here and then putting a cap on it for now, because I don't think that we're going to do it. But if I do want to do it in the future, I want to have that ability, and I don't want to run oil through the system and then weld to it, because what happens is, since this is aluminum, it's very porous. The oil draws itself into the aluminum, and so no matter how well you clean this out, if you've had oil in it in the past, welding to it, it's not going to look the best. It's not going to be the best. That's really why I bought a new one. And so when we're welding in these bunks and stuff, is that way everything's going to be perfect. I mean, the welds are going to look really nice and everything's going to look really nice and it's going to fit up perfectly. So that's really why we ordered a new one of these. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And on our old one, right here, it was hitting the steering rack mount specifically, and that was causing like a concave in this, and I thought it was getting so worn down that that we were having issues. And I think that was from previous engine mounts. When I used to have rubber engine mounts, the engine really moved a lot. Now we have solid engine mounts, so the engine doesn't move nearly as much, and so I just really wanted that to be super solid again. So maybe we'll notch our steering rack just a wee bit. I'll see if it's still hitting, and if it is, we'll notch it, but if not, I think we're going to be a-okay. That is pretty much it in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put these little bungs inside this guy. I'm just going to open up one of these boxes. There's no point for me to open up all four of them. They're all the same thing. So these are off-brand Ryobi batteries. These are 5 amp hours. So you can get 4 amp hours, you can get 6 amp hours, you can get 9 amp hours. I think I got 4 of these batteries for like less than 80 bucks, which is like incredible. Honestly, super cheap. Maybe one day we'll be baller and go to Milwaukee like everybody wants me to, but for right now, Ryobi hasn't really let me down. So we've opened up all of the boxes that we really need to open up. We're gonna get started on tearing down this engine, which is probably the most exciting thing for me, because it's been a while since I've been in there. I haven't opened up the motor since, I think it was like December or January this last season. It's been in the car running and driving right now for roughly 8 months, almost 9 months. So it's been going well, no issues. So I'm excited to tear it down. I hope not to find any issues. Whenever I do something and we upgrade stuff, when pulling the engine out, I really like to go through and refresh it. You know, for the cost of gaskets and stuff like that, we're gonna refresh it. And in this case, we had to pull all the pistons out to gap the rings. So since we're gonna be gapping the rings, there's no point in me not going through everything and checking everything out to make sure it is good to go.